Good morning. The next step in our secluded tower is to create our second path so that we can jump from one path to the next, and then the second curve is going to be a spiraling curve that goes up the stairwell. We're going to use weight blending to keyframe the on-off of that blend, and we're going to jump from one to the other, and as well as have multiple targets for our aim constraint, and we can switch or blend which target our camera is focusing on. And we're going to go up to the spiraling staircase all the way to the top, and then if we have time we will look down the spiraling staircase and create a vertigo effect. Okay, let's do the easy part. So here's where I left off after our Q&A. I have my camera, I hid some of the extra stuff during the questions, and I just have this one exterior camera, this one exterior path visible. I chose the motion path controlled object and I set its total length to be 240 frames. Again, the x-axis is time, and I set the frame range to 240 both right here, and you can see it says 240 right here for a total of 10 seconds at 24 frames a second. And I don't have any changes to the speed or the quality across this line. We went over that in the Q&A, so I'll skip that for now in this work. Now I just want to show you how to make everything work and bring it together, and then we can get to the secret sauce kind of stuff in the animation. So I want to get everything functioning, and then we can talk about how to make it all the more appealing. Okay, first let's hide the walls of the tower and hide the roof of the tower so I can focus just on the stairwell. And I don't need the graph editor at the moment. I can deselect everything, just click in the blank area, and let's just focus on one big view. I also don't need to see the foliage, the primitive bushes and so forth. I'm going to reset this camera to the default view so that it basically points and snaps to the origin so that I can work around the spiraling staircase. Next, I want the spiraling staircase itself to be selectable, so I'm going to disable the reference in the display layers. Next, I'm going to get my EP curve tool, and if you recall, I said that one is really good for tracing. So EP curve tool, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to snap to points. I might as well just turn it on while I do this. I'll just click the magnet so it's always on, and I'll snap to the first outside point first top outside corner of each step. Take a moment and do this. Take a few moments and do this. I hope you had a good weekend, and I hope you do enjoy this new, slightly asynchronous, partially asynchronous format. I think these lessons are going to be much more focused. Okay, and there we have it. And you may want to, if you wish, you can extend this curve just a little further if you'd like to. That's as simple as selecting the curve, going up here to the modeling curve, and there's a tool called extend right there, extend the curve, and that'll just push it a little further, and you can do that a couple of times. If you want to, you can even just middle click that menu a couple of times, and that will just push that curve out at that particular angle if you want to get a little bit more at the ends. I think it also added, it also added a little, did it? Nope. Okay, just on the ends it did that. That's great. So just a little bit of extra curve right there. And of course, if you want to, you can even go in there and manipulate it, model it a little bit. You can delete points if you want to, for those of you who know how to do that kind of modeling. Okay, now that I have a curve, I want to get an object on that curve that is going to be a motion path controlled object. So the funny part about the motion path controlled object is that it's not very good at jumping to new curves. I suppose I could figure out a way to do that, and maybe I can assign that job to one of the advanced rigging students and say, hey, let's try and find a way where we can just take a motion path and jump from one curve to the next, or if it's possible. I don't know if it is. So as opposed to, instead of going down that line of thinking, which would take a long time, I think it's just as well to do the things that you do know how to do. And for me, I know how to add a parent constraint and switch with a parent constraint. So to not overtalk this, let's rename this one. This is the path interior int, and I need a group, an empty group, really, just a floating group. So deselect and press Ctrl G, and that makes it an empty group sitting at the origin. And again, let's name that motion path controlled, just keeping with the same names, and we'll just put int as interior. And again, the order of selection doesn't matter when we're doing the path constraint. So we'll go to our rigging menu, constrain, motion path, attach the motion path. And we might as well set it up, because we know we're going to have a camera on this thing. We might as well set up the motion path to have the same setting. So it's going to be front axis Z and inverse the front. For those of you who are in the rigging class, you may want to take notice that we have other features in here, like vector, front twisting, up twist, side twist. There's a lot of other possibilities in controlling the camera with the motion path. So for those of you who are doing rigging in the other course, you might want to explore that a little further. And if we have time for it, I can demonstrate some of those things. Okay, next we want to create a new empty group. Another one. Control G, double click it, call this thing parent underscore constrain, CONSTR should do for constrain. This is the object this is our new object that's going to be parent constrained to the motion path controlled objects. So it's going to have two controlling it. It's going to have motion path control from the exterior and hold control, motion path controlled interior, and then again hold control and click the parent constrained object. Then we're going to go to the constrain menu and choose parent constrain option box. And we are going to disable maintain offset and run it, apply. And what we get is a parent constraint where this group, and let's see the group, go to display, transform display, local rotation axes. So that's where the group lives. And it lives kind of up in the air like that because it's 50% between two. It's 50% between two objects that are motion path constrained. So as we scrub the timeline, we can see it's always 50% between the two of them. So it's doing some really weird stuff. So what we want to do is animate the switch. And I don't think they're called switches, but it's basically right here. It's these two controls, and they don't even have really articulate names. It's called W0 and W1. The W stands for weight, as in how to weigh something. how much value do we give it from one to the other. So what I will do is set the weight of it to be 0 on W1. So what that does is it makes it follow the camera. See? It's following the camera precisely. Pretty nice. And it's on the path, just exactly in the same position where the motion path object is. And if you have any concerns about the quality of the animation, you can Alt V, you can play it and make sure everything still looks okay. Yep, everything still looks okay. It's still stable. All we did was we introduced a new object that is parent constrained, and we're using the parent constraint because I can blend from one curve to the next curve. All right, now let's try and see everything. I'll open the graph editor. All right, if that didn't make sense to you, rewind, take a look at it again. Okay, now what we want to do is key the switch. We want to key it jumping from one curve to the second curve. So do you recall our first curve? If I select the motion path controlled object, we can see the U value from frame 1 to frame 240. I like 240. It feels like a good speed. It seems to fit the scale of the scene well. I'm going to extend my frame range all the way out to 480. So I'll do that up here. 480. Right there. Alright. Now, bring your cursor to the outliner and click the interior motion path controlled object. And see that it too is animated from 1, or in this case 0, to frame 240. Let's move these two keys forward 240 frames. 240 frames. So this value is time. I'm going to enter a small equation. I hope you can see this, and you might want to stop whatever's distracting you and pay attention to this tiny little equation I'm going to type in here. It's going to be plus equals 240, and that's going to take both keys and push them forward. Press enter. It's going to push them forward that amount. Each key will get pushed forward that amount. So I've basically pushed forward that animation 240 frames. So if we select now, hold control and select both motion controlled objects, you can see this is the U value of the first curve from the beginning of the curve to the end of the curve. And then this one's going to be the U value from the beginning of the curve to the end of the curve going up the stairwell. And then after we've got all the connections and everything's hooked up, then we can toy with the actual quality of how it animates. Still following me? Good. If not, rewind, see it again. Alright. Now I want to keyframe the parent constraint. I want to keyframe the parent constraint. So I'll do that at frame 239, and I can just jump to frame. Where's the number that says what frame? Oh, there's the number. 239. Now, at frame 239, I'm going to select both, click drag, both weights, W0 and W1 of the parent constraint. Right click and choose set key. Where is it? There it is. Key selected. Great. So now we can see the keys. And I suppose we could do that at frame 240. You know what? Let's just move that forward a frame. So select both of those. 240, right up to the end. All right. Now at frame 241, we're going to switch the weight, 0, 1, select both channels, right click, choose key selected, and now you can see how it crisscrosses. 0 becomes 1, 1 becomes 0, and if I scrub the playhead, you can see now that local rotation, because I turned on, what was it called? The local rotation axis, so that we can actually see where that invisible dot, that invisible object is. We can see now it's going up the spiraling staircase here. So, in just a matter of, and it jumps. You see that? That was the 1 frame jump. As it approaches frame 240, boom, 241, jumps, and up it goes. So cool. Again, if you need to rewind, go back a couple steps, see it again. This is working out pretty nice. All right, so the next step is to change what we've done, because as we can see, the camera does not actually follow that. So what we're going to do is change the hierarchy. At frame 0, we have our point at target. Turn off that point snapping. I forgot that was still on. I don't want that to mess anything up. Point at target. Right? That's the thing that's actually pointing at the target at the doorway. Well, it is simply a child of the motion path controlled object. Well, it just so happens that the parent constrained object is following the motion path controlled object. So what we really need is we need the point at target to be a child of the parent constrained object. Okay, here we go. This is done at frame 0. And middle click, drag, and drop right on top of the parent constrained object. All right, again, if you have any suspicions that something has gone wrong, look through your camera, play it back, and see if it still looks good. And it seems to be still functioning just as we left it. So animation wise, nothing's really changed except, oh, there. You see? Now we've got this super smooth transition going up the stairwell. That was really cool. All right. And now we can keyframe. Now we can keyframe the target. Where's the target? Where are you? At the doorway. This thing. You see? Because as the camera was going up the stairs, it's still looking at that thing right here. It's looking right here. So, to help us along, we can, at frame, again, 240, we can drop a keyframe. We don't have no keys on this thing right now. Now this is just floating in space. I don't think we need to do anything fancy with it. We just want to move it up and down. So let's keyframe it. And that's a pretty, as far as keyframing is concerned, this is kind of sloppy. I really don't need to key all of those channels. Let's just key one channel. It really is probably just maybe 3 channels. It's just the translation. Let's right click and choose key selected. So just the translation. That way we don't get a really messy graph editor. Okay, so I'll just keep away from my finger away from the S hotkey. I'll use the channel box to do that. Next, at frame 480-ish, 480 exactly, we'll move this up, and maybe over about center, maybe a little lower so the camera's pointing down because, well, you know what? No, we'll just bring it right up here so the camera's fairly level, right about there. And then again, let's tag all 3, select all 3, and key selected, And now we have some simple F-curves of it animating upward. Now, let's see how that feels as we come down the path of the first path, and it'll come to the doorway, it'll come to a stop, and then pop! There we go, it jumps. And it is tracking that target nicely, really smooth. Awesome. Now we can use that target to look back down the stairwell and create the vertigo effect. Let's take a moment to review before I make the vertigo effect. We have created cameras, we've created two paths, we created them with the EP curve tool. We used the spiraling staircase to snap it into place. We have created new transform nodes, those are the groups, transform nodes that are constrained using motion paths, aim constraints, and parent constraint. And we have multiple drivers for the parent, but we don't have multiple drivers for the aim. I can talk about that. And we are jumping from one path to the other with a successful blend, or in this case, really, we're using the blend to create a switch from one path to the second path. Let's address the issue of multiple aim targets. So let's do that towards the beginning of the animation. So let's say, and this is even after the fact, even after we've created all of this, can we add another target? Can we add another object to target? Why, yes we can. Yes we can. So let's get the trees back in. Good. And let's say I have a target somewhere in this vicinity. So let's use the same thing that we did earlier. We simply made a group without anything selected, Control G, which makes a null object. Double click it. Let's call this thing the target at the tree. Really simple. And again, let's turn on the local axis. Let's turn that on. This allows us to see it. Display local axis. That's the same thing that lives right here. Local rotation axes. It lives right there too, in the attribute editor. Okay, and then let's move this thing over to the tree, maybe partway up. Some kind of, put it in the front so we can see it. Okay, so we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that target. All right. So it's the driver. So let's just middle click and drag and drop it underneath the first target. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a little confusing. I used a locator for the first target, didn't I? I suppose I should do that again. You know, I really should. I'm not going to re-record that part. I'll let you keep that. But just out of matter of consistency, let's make this locator, also this thing also a locator, and name it target at the tree. I'll leave that other little bit in there about the attribute editor and the local rotation axes. Alright, put that here and here, and we can even scale it up. Like this time we can scale it up. There is something in the attribute editor for changing the scale of a shape node. So you know what? Abandons. Let's not scale it. Don't scale it. Let's use this feature right here, the local scale. Let's do 555. Yeah, and that allows us to see it a little bit more clearly, and maybe we could change the color of it. That would be nice. Apparently not. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Drawing override, overrides, RGB. Oh, there we go. Yep, that's it. And so drawing overrides, that's the transform tab. Drawing override, enable overrides, index or RB, probably index is fine, because we're just choosing one color. Where's the red? There it is. And that way we can see the target. Okay. So now you got two ways to make a target. Okay, that's really over talked. Sorry. Close that. All right, and then that's a driver, and then the point at target is driven. It already has a target at the doorway. When we add another one, same thing. It simply adds it in at the same value, you see. So we can add new targets at any time. Just understand that Maya then automatically is blending them. So it's going, the camera is if we play it back, the camera is looking 50% between both targets. It's not really looking at the door, it's not really looking at the tree, it's looking at the halfway point between both targets. So again, it's like their head is, they got a broken neck or something. They don't know where to look. So, or they don't know how to look over there. So, same thing as before. Set, in this case, we want to look at the tree, so I'll set the doorway to 0, and we want to keyframe that. And we want to keyframe that at a very specific frame. Where am I right now? I'm at 67. Go ahead and drop a key wherever you are, and then move the key to where you want it to switch. So maybe, where do we want it to switch? So we can keep looking at the tree, maybe until it gets near the door, and then we blend, maybe right about somewhere in here. We can always adjust the timing of it, but somewhere in here, and we blend it the other way. So then I say 1 and 0, and then again right click key, and now we are blending from one target to the next. So I'm targeting the tree. Okay, that's covered. Target killed. Now I can go focus my attention on the door, or you could focus your attention on the door, go to the tree, and then back to the door, however you want to do it. You might do that. Maybe, again, focus at the door, not on the tree. Where'd it go? There you are. Focus on the door, not the tree, and key that. So I'm looking at the door, I see something at the tree, and then I go back to the door. Something like that. Alright, and then we can talk about, let's just take a short break from setting up constraints and switches and stuff, and just talk about the quality of this F-curve, the quality of the animation. Right now it's just using the standard slow in and slow out, but you could just as well come in here at any point and adjust the tangent handles, manipulating how hard it hits that key. So you can come into those keys a little quicker if you want to, and that'll give it a totally different feeling. So it'll exit quickly and hit the next key quickly. So I'm focused on the come on now. I'm focused on the door. Snap, but doesn't stay over there very long. Okay, that was kind of weird. Or maybe we should stay over there a little longer. You can even copy these keys. Wait, where is that thing? Copy key. Bring your playhead right here and paste the key. Don't do a Control-C, Control-V. You'll get a very terrible result, because Control-C and Control-V in Maya is going to do something else that I can't remember exactly what it is called, but it's like copying and pasting objects. It's not quite what I want. I specifically want to use these copy and paste functions right here to copy and paste keys. And I don't know if they're in the right-click menu. No, they're not in the right-click menu. So you could even flatten it out, like focus on this target for just a little longer. So I copy these keys, paste these keys, focus on that target just a little longer before switching back to the door. Take a look at it. Yep, inspected it. Okay, move on to the next target. And that might be a little quick, so you could take these two keys, hold shift and click and drag. Hold shift, click and drag, and shift just constrains it to horizontal or vertical movement. So you might focus on that door, focus on that tree. Huh, what's going on over there? It's nothing. Back to the door. Okay, and then you can have fun toying with that stuff as we go. So let's look at what's left in our list of things to do. Did we do everything here? Do we have multiple drivers for aim and parent? Yes, we do. Did we jump from path to path? Yes, we did. We animated the weight blend? Yes, we did. Animate. Oops, whoa. Don't want to yell. Animate the weight blending. And that's for both the parent constraints and for the aim constraints. Now let's look at this list here. So next I want to do vertigo, possibly a camera shake, possibly a camera walk using an expression to undulate on the y-axis if we have time for that. If I don't, you can ask me in the Q&A. We'll have time in the Q&A to do that. We may have time and have time for in the Q&A to do the camera shake. Camera switching, we only have one camera right now. We're actually doing camera jumping. So I'm going to just dump that right now or strike it. And I'm going to save that for the train scene. In the train scene, we're going to do camera switching. We'll save that for later. I'll show you fog, animate the target. We did that. Did we do that? Yes, we did do that. We did animate the target. We did in the Q&A, or at some point, we did remodel the curves, and we did animate the curve CVs. No, we didn't do that. We're not going to do that. So let's strike that. If you want to know more about that topic, animating the curves CVs, again, ask me in the Q&A and I can expand on that. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. We've got a lot of the things in here. So now let's look at this issue, the vertigo effect. If you're not familiar with the topic of vertigo or what this word means, it's basically a camera effect created by Alfred Hitchcock in the movie, probably several movies, Birds, I think, and the man goes to the top of a tower, he looks down the tower, and he has vertigo, which just describes his sense of losing his balance and feeling like he's going to fall. And we use this word now pretty frequently to describe just the sense of losing your balance. We very frequently see this effect even in our TV shows and even in anime and animations, 3D animations. It's pretty wild. Alright, so I'm going to do this on the side to demonstrate what the effect is and how to do it in here, and then we'll keyframe that on our camera. So I'll start this by creating a new camera, and I'm just going to focus on that camera by looking through it, and let's just pull it back, move it up a bit, scale it up a bit so I can see it quite a bit, and and you know, I've been just dying to change the color of this camera. I got to change it. Hold on. Control A, override. Just anything other than, yeah, red's good. Yeah, there we go. Now I can see the camera. Whew. It's been killing me that I can barely see the camera. All right, so I got this giant honking camera here, and whoop, that's the color of selection. Yeah, yellow is fine. All right. Then I want to look through this camera, this temporary, that one, yep. And let's mask, gate mask, and that should help me. Now I want to zoom in while I dolly out, or dolly in while I zoom out. And that's the effect. It's so cool. Let's try the effect keyframe at frame 0, S, frame 100, move it forward towards the stairwell, keyframe. Look through the camera and scrub 0 to 100. We are coming towards the subject. Okay, now go to the camera shape tab in the attribute editor and choose focal length. What we want to do is essentially zoom out while the character is moving in, while it's moving in. So we'll start with a very close lens. I'll flatten 75. Let's just choose 75. So that's pretty flat. That's pretty zoomed in. Again, we are at frame 0. And set a key. Right click on that channel, choose set a key. Then go to frame 100 and bring this value down to something like 12. Again, right click, set a key. Maybe really exaggerate it, like 6. Right click, choose set a key. And now go back to frame 0 and play the effect. Isn't that wild? We see this a lot and let's change the frame range to 100. We see this a lot in our shows. Isn't that cool? Again, that's dollying in, trucking in, walking the camera closer while zooming out. Really wild. I love it. Look how things just stretch right out. And it seems to warp. And it doesn't take that much. I mean, I'm really exaggerating it. And if we banked the camera, I bet it would feel very anxious. Or if we shaked the camera at the same time, I bet it would feel very anxiety. Yeah, it'll increase your anxiety. Probably shouldn't stare at that for too long. It's starting to happen. All right. So what if we did it the other way? Let's make another camera. New camera, please. Just as a side-by-side comparison. Approximately at the same location at frame 0. Just a little bit up and over, maybe a different color so I can see it a little bit easier. Purple will do. All right. Now, this time it starts close to the stairwell, the opposite. And again, we'll keyframe at 0 at frame 100. We'll move back. We'll keyframe there, and we'll go to the camera shape at frame 0. We will have a very low, or I'm sorry, very low focal length, very wide lens, key, and then at frame 100. I think I got this right. I'll flatten it, frame 75 focal length, and set a key, and then let's look through that. Let's look through that new camera, and we can even hide that one so it's not in our way, and see what it looks like. Oh, how neat, isn't it? So it's just the opposite, just flattening it out. It's like playing the other one in reverse. How cool is that? And the camera is so flat. It sees itself, or no? I'm seeing the other one. Yeah, I'm still seeing this one because its visibility was keyed. I'd have to go back in here, select the visibility, and remove those keys, and then set visibility to 0, just like that. Okay, good. Now the other camera is invisible. Isn't that neat? So I think I want to do the other one. So let's look at the first one I did. I think I want this one. I think I think I want to get to the top of the stairwell. Everything feels normal, but then suddenly it just feels like it's really far away. And we start to stumble as we get sick at the top of the stairwell because this tower is just so exceedingly tall. Okay. Now you know how to do it. Let's mix it in to the first camera, the original camera. All right, so let's hide this one as well. Oh, break this connection and hide this thing. There we go. And hide there. Control H to hide, if you didn't know. All right. Back to the original camera. Now, yes. Now, where are we? We are at about frame, what was it? 480. Yeah, 480. So let's extend this a little bit further, maybe another 48 frames-ish, 48-ish. So what, 524, 528? Something in there that should do. 528. And we'll get to about 480. Let's go to 480. Enter the number 480. And at this point, we'll keyframe. And this is going to take a little bit of playing. But, oh yeah. And I forgot to do this earlier. I'm sorry. Let's just address one important issue before I make this final move on the Vertigo. The camera is actually going through the walls. See, it can't see anything. So if it sees the wall all the way through this. So what we need to do is manipulate the position of either one of the parents. We could manipulate one of the parents. We could add another group to move it, or we could just move the camera itself, which I think is acceptable, is to just move the camera itself. So at frame, what was it? 240, we're at the bottom of the stairwell. I think it's 241 actually, right? Yeah, 241. We're at the bottom of the stairwell, and it's actually on the outside. And if you're wondering where the lens is, the lens of this virtual camera is exactly at the pivot point of the camera. So wherever the transform manipulator is, that's where the lens is. And so what we're seeing here is the inside of the wall. So we need this transform manipulator to be on the inside of the wall. So I'll just nudge it forward a little. And it can just live there. You can either keyframe it, like you could, okay, so you could go to 240 and key its translation. And like a switch, like we did earlier with the weight blending, go to frame 240, where's 241? I'm zoomed in too far. 241, we then move it on its z-axis towards the stairwell, and again key those channels. And I would just key all three translations just to keep things straightforward, but don't key everything though, that's just sloppy. Alright, so now we know, and now we can see that the camera is on the inside. Awesome. Right, it's going to get to the top, blah blah blah, way up here, and then we want it to look down. Right, so somewhere in this area in time. So we are past 480. So we got the 480. Wait, where's 480? No, now we're at 480. So somewhere maybe close to 480, we start to look down. Maybe at 460, we start to look down. So instead of this object, this target staying up here, let's push this back to 460-ish, and you can make your own decision exactly on the timing. I'm not going to overwork the art of it right now. And then we move it back down, say by, how many frames is that? 60 to 40, it's about 2 seconds, a little less. And we keyframe it, but we keyframe it with the y-axis going down over there, and maybe there-ish, somewhere right there. And we can see the camera. Oh, and don't forget to key it. It looks like we did key rotation and scale and visibility for this object, and I made mention just a moment ago to keep things clean, so let's break those. So we only have 3 channels in the graph editor. That's a lot less confusing. We're not doing anything with the rotation, scale, or visibility for that object. Okay, now we can see that the camera's pointing down this time, but it's looking, again, it's looking through a step, one of the steps, the top step. So again, let's select the camera and do a little more keyframe work. So let's drop a keyframe where it is. Negative. Actually, don't drop a keyframe where it is. Go back 1, 2 frames. Now drop a keyframe, key selected, and then go forward a frame or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and now key it again. This will help me to stay at the top of the stairwell, and it'll help to keep these F-curves flat. Flat until we want them to move. So now what I want to do is move on the X, I suppose, or maybe the Z axis. Yeah, really not that. It's really on the Y. Yeah, it's really on the Y axis. So let's just move it over here, maybe back there. And I'm looking at this viewport right now. I'm looking at this one while I move it, trying to find a good spot. Again, select all 3, right-click, key selected, and you'll see the adjustment in the graph editor. So here I'm coming up the stairwell, up, up, up. Turn on the wireframe. Up, 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 and then... yeah, that's not very smooth. We can clean that up. It's digging itself right into the stairwell at that spot. Let's push this key back. That's a little smoother. The y-axis, push the y-axis back a bit more. That's smoother. I like that. That's better. That's better. Okay, yeah, good. Then at frame 505-ish, whatever, wherever that is, again, let's look at the target, and manipulating the target in the camera's view makes it go crazy. So be sure to use this, your editing camera, to do that. And then we can manipulate just exactly where it's going to look. Now, if you bring the target directly underneath the camera will flip. You see? You see? The camera will start to flip around. So that's starting to lose control. So let's keep it slightly in front of it so we don't lose control. That should be sufficient. That should be sufficient. I suppose I could even move the camera over, up over a bit more. Like so. Yeah, again, still not quite getting what I want. Actually, seeing a bit of the step that I'm standing on makes it feel more effective, and we'll get a better depth if I stay right here. Okay, I'm going to stay right here, and then between, somewhere between here and the end, I will key the focal length. So a mixture of the camera, let's see, what am I going to do? How was it? Do you guys remember? I moved the camera towards while zooming out. Yes? Is that how it went? Move the camera towards while zooming out. So I'm going to come to frame 520-ish, give myself a little room to play, and I'll keyframe coming towards the floor. Not too much. Key it. Good. Then I'll key the focal length. So the focal length we will, what was it? Zoom out. There it is. Maybe even more wild, like 6. That's crazy. Then go to frame 506, wherever that last key is, and set this to something like, oh, it was at 35. Let's try 75. And let's go back to the previous keyframe on the y-axis here, just a little further back, 460, 468, somewhere in there. And let's set it to the default of 35. I just want to see what happens if I go from a standard 35 to a flat lens to that. Yeah, it doesn't feel right at all. You know what? I don't think I need to go that flat on the lens. Let's actually have a consistent lens length with the camera selected. I should have access to its shape node focal length. Shape node, there it is. Hit that little plus sign in the graph editor. Shape node focal length. Instead of having these two keys at these two separate values, let's set their values to be the same. 55. 55 is this happy middle lens. It's a common SLR, digital SLR lens, or SLR lens. Swappable lenses on a SLR camera. All right. So now in the Q&A session, I can answer your questions about how do we make this, better? How can we further refine this? How do we adjust the keyframes? Now that I've got the whole thing set up, so I think I've accomplished the goal. I am walking towards the tower. I'm curious. I'm looking around. I target the tree. I target the door. I walked around a tree. I'm following a path. I jump from one path to the next path. I go up the stairwell. And then once I'm at the top, I look down and I have a moment of anxiety, which I could further refine the keyframing of that. So I've accomplished all the pieces, and now I can adjust the pieces and adjust the timing and add the fog. Oh, one last thing. You can ask me in Q&A more about the fog. I want to point out to you right now about the fog that in order to see fog, you have to turn this on. I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but if you want to see fog, you have to turn on hardware fog. It's under the shading menu of the viewport. And if you turn off the wireframe, it becomes a little more obvious that there's a fogginess here. And there's an option box to hardware fog, and you can get in there and change the color of the fog. Okay, so and also the start distance and end distance, and how intense it is and so forth. Very much like you see in your video games or your old school video games. And so now there's always this fog in my whoa, press G, there we go, press F, there it is, G, there we go. So I got the whole timeline, and so now there's this heavy dense fog all the way through, way too dense I suppose. Again, go to the option box and make some adjustments on distances and so forth, and colors, and it doesn't need to be such a harsh thing, but it's a nice little addition, especially when we're looking at this thing in the real-time viewport. And then go ahead in the Q&A and ask me how to clean up this scene and prepare it for a proper visual, like how to hide curves, maybe add some light, get some shadows in here. You can ask me in the Q&A session about that. All right, I'll see you at the Q&A on Thursday. Have a good day, whatever time of day it is.